Hi, I'm Pastor David McNitsky, one of the pastors at Manchac United Methodist Church, and I want to welcome you to this noon Nourishment. We run a segment Monday through Friday, and this is Friday, so I'm making it formal Friday. I dropped my hat and added a collared shirt today. I'm very excited to tell you that next Friday the cavalry will arrive as Pastor Chanson and Jason will be taking the Friday segment. I'll be doing Monday, Wednesday, and Mark Hickson does Tuesday, and Kim Carroll does Thursday. I've been talking this week about the about the story of Jesus reaching out to the lepers in Luke 17. And on the first examination of the story, we realized that Jesus healed the lepers as he did many people who lived at a social distance and who lived with a lot of different stigmas or diseases. For two reasons. Number one, Jesus believed that love was always more powerful than fear. And secondly, Jesus believed that it was more likely that people would catch what he had than that he would catch what they had. It was sort of a reversal of a great infection, and he would give them healing. But then we looked Wednesday at the story of the 10 lepers and noticed that while all 10 were healed, only one of them returned to say thank you to Jesus. And Jesus said to that man, "Your faith has made you whole." And so we learned that there was a difference between health and wholeness, or healing and wholeness, and that the key to wholeness in life can be found in gratitude. So today I want to close this week by talking a little bit more about gratitude. You see, gratitude is very challenging in our days. I'm noticing that on the evening news that we tune into, about 27 minutes of the newscast is given to the difficult and negative stories of the day, and then about the last 3 minutes is some sort of positive or feel-good story. Apparently, the way they figure is that one positive story will override about 15 negative stories. Not sure the math quite works like that. So it's difficult to be grateful in days like this. Even when we didn't have a pandemic, it was often challenging for us to be grateful. The American writer John Cheever once said this, that as he traveled around North America, he found that the dominant middle-class emotion of Americans was disappointment. They weren't quite what they wanted to be. They didn't quite have what they wanted to have. And so giving thanks in these circumstances becomes difficult. And yet, Jesus obviously called on the lepers to be thankful. And Paul even said this in 1 Thessalonians 5:18, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for that's the will of Christ Jesus for you." Now think about this. Paul said this even though he endured social isolation in prison, even though he endured health difficulties and didn't even have a hospital that would take care of him, even though he endured persecution from enemies, and also because Paul said in his own admission, he worried about the survival of his church every day. I hear you, Paul. But in the midst of all of this, Paul was able to give thanks. How can we give thanks in difficult circumstances? Let me suggest two things to you today. The first one, it may be obvious, but let me state it anyway. It's important in order to give thanks to focus on what you have, not on what you don't have. What do you have? Not on what you're not able to do, but what are you able to do right now? Focus on what you have. Now, John Ortberg, a pastor and author, is very helpful to me when he reminds people that in order to focus on what you have and be grateful, you have to learn to give thanks for imperfect gifts. Learn to give thanks even if things aren't exactly as you want them to be. And he tells the story of the cartoon of Snoopy at Thanksgiving. And Snoopy looks through the window at Charlie Brown's table, and there's a big turkey, there's dressing, and people are eating. And then Snoopy looks at his dog bowl. Then he gets back on his house and he reasons this, well, it could be worse. I could be the turkey. So you learn to give thanks even though things aren't exactly as you would like them to be. One of the great things that the Jewish tradition teaches is that we should be thankful for people for any good thing they've done for us, even if later they did things to hurt us. Give thanks for them anyway, for those good things. Buddhism teaches something similar when it says we should be grateful for our enemies because they are our most precious teachers. And so we are. grateful when we think about things that aren't perfect, but still they're good enough, and we're grateful in that way. I had something happen, some of you may know, a couple of 4 weeks ago, actually. Wanted to show you the picture of it. My wife and I were traveling at 70 miles an hour, and a car ran a stop sign and pulled in front of us. And this is what was left of our car. Now, it's not what it used to be. It doesn't run anymore, but I'm grateful because two things: the airbags deployed and the engine dropped as it should. Well, and actually I'm going to get some money and get a new car, but we learn to give thanks for things even when they are not perfect. I was at 2 different grocery stores the other day looking for chicken, and it reminded me of something that happened on a trip a few years ago to Burundi with our mission team. Our driver suddenly stopped and pulled over to the side of the road, and he went and bought a live chicken from somebody selling chickens at the side of the road. And we asked him what he was doing, and he said, "Well, this is dinner tonight." And the guy sitting in the back seat with me said this. He said, "Well, that brings a whole new level of meaning to the phrase, 'Honey, would you stop by and pick up some chicken on your way home?'" So I was reminded it could be worse. My chicken was already chopped up and prepared that I found the other day. So we learn to focus on what we have, not on what we don't have. And then secondly, I'd suggest this: focus also on who you have. One of my practices in life is 3 times a week to run through what I call a gratitude list of all the things for which I'm very thankful to God. But what I noticed recently is 90% of those items on my gratitude list are people. Now, perhaps what we don't have is the ability to be in person with folks during this time of shutdown. But on the other hand, maybe it will help us cause to mind all the wonderful people that we wish we could spend time with and we've enjoyed spending time with physically and personally in our lives. So I focus on people. The other thing is I focus on one person in particular, and that is, of course, the God of the universe, the great giver of every good gift in life. And so I focus on who I have, and God is certainly a giver, and God has given me many things. So probably my grandparents were right years ago when they taught me, count your many blessings, count them one by one. Perhaps you've seen the practice recommended that at the end of each day, you look for 3 things and you name 3 things that you are grateful for. After you do this, this practice conditions you to look for and see God, I think, in your life. It is practice at gratitude and conditioning. One of the things the Jewish tradition teaches is this: that when something good happens to you, you stop right there in that very place and say thank you to God. I remember I got some really good news while standing in line at a pharmacy one day, and then was on the way home and realized that I had not thanked God for that. So I drove back to the pharmacy, got in the same spot in line, and I think people thought I would just lost my mind, but I wanted in that place to give thanks. And I think that helps us focus on God. Because remember, God is your heavenly parent and gives you what you need. But like any good parent, God's not going to give you everything. When my children were 8 years old, they might have wanted to drive the car, but I wasn't going to let them. Reminds me of a parable that John Ortberg tells. It's called the parable of the golden arches. It seems it goes like this. There was a 6-year-old girl who asked her mother and dad if she could get a Happy Meal at McDonald's for dinner that night. And Mom said, "No, I've already cooked the meal. It's almost ready." "Oh, please, Mom, please." "No, maybe we can go tomorrow night. The food is almost ready to be put on the table." "Please, Mom, please. If you do this for me, I'll never ask for anything else again. I'll always be happy." Well, that was too much for Mom and Dad to resist, so they said, "Okay." And they went and they took her, and she got her Happy Meal. She was 6 years old. Now, when she was 11 years old, her parents divorced, and she had to live in a single-parent family, but she never complained because when she was 6, she got a Happy Meal. When she was in junior high, she was excluded by the cool kids in the in group, but she never complained or asked for anything because she had a Happy Meal when she was 6 years old. When she went to high school, she broke out with a bad case of acne, and it was hard to find a date for the important things like homecoming or the prom, but she never complained because of her Happy Meal. And then she did meet somebody in college, and they married after college, and she helped him get through professional school as he began a very important and lucrative practice as a physician. But then one day he walked out and left her. But do you know, she never ever complained, because she said to herself, when I was 6 years old, I got a Happy Meal. Now, do you believe that story? Of course not, because only a child would believe that it takes a change in circumstances to make us happy. There's something deeper than circumstances that are involved in happiness, and that deeper thing is gratitude. As we continue to go on this noontime journey together, I want to thank you again for being with us, and I want to remind you that even though you and I may be stuck at home, we can still journey together. God bless you.